Hello Pokemon fans, I'm Professor K for the Pokemon Evolutionaries, and today we are going to be kicking off a brand new series, Pokemon TCG Facts and History, with my very special guest, BirdKeeperToby.
Hey Pokemon Masters, BirdKeeperToby here, and I am really excited to help kick off this series. There is so much to learn about the Pokemon trading card game. Man, I'm excited.
I'm quite excited as well. We're going to be talking about some really interesting and cool facts about the Pokemon TCG, from base set back in 1999 all the way up to present day, breakthrough, and beyond, with facts that you may not have known.
It sounds like we're really going to be breaking things down, eh?
Oh boy, this is going to be fun. Let's get started with this before we put ourselves through too much punishment. Ha ha ha! Oh, actually, that was just awful. Never mind. Forget that I said that. But let's not get too far ahead of ourselves though. Breakthrough is quite a bit in the future if we're starting all the way back at base set. Alright guys, let's get started with the block of sets that started the whole shebang. Base set through Gym Challenge. It all started back in 1999 here in the States, and most of the world except for Japan, who obviously got these a lot earlier since that's where Pokemon originated from in the first place. A lot of stores were very reluctant to even stock the game, ironically, and it didn't begin to take off on a widespread basis until March or April of that same year. There were a few different print runs of the base set. There was Shadowless First Edition, Shadowless Unlimited, Unlimited, and regular first edition. The first edition print run sold very quickly, making it one of the most sought after of all of the first Pokemon TCG expansions. All cards in the first few print runs, including first edition and unlimited, were printed with a thinner attack text and also HP. These cards also did not include the drop shadows in the illustration window. These sleeker looking cards were known as Shadowless and are more valuable than later printings of that set. Several of the final form Pokemon were left out of this set, including Dragonite, Dodrio, Gengar, Pidgeot, Sandslash, Butterfree, and Hypno. These cards were later printed in Jungle and Fossil. The English cards were ordered alphabetically and by rarity, holo rares being first, non-holo rares being second, uncommons, then commons, and then trainers, also energy being the last one as well. This style of ordering remained in place in the Pokemon TCG until the black and white era.
Wow, now that's quite the way to kick off a trading card game. 4 sets for just one series. Needless to say, the Pokemon trading card game was a hit the moment retailers started stocking it, and there was demand for another expansion. Jungle. Jungle was a relatively small set in Japan, only featuring 48 cards, which was later expanded to 64 across everywhere else in the world. This is because Wizards of the Coast decided to print not only holographic, but also non-holographic versions of cards that were previously only holographic. This became a very common tactic for Wizards of the Coast to make their sets seem bigger, and also make sure every pack didn't guarantee a holographic card, making them rarer. The set was originally supposed to be released in August of 1999, but because Topps also decided they wanted to release some Pokemon cards, they decided to push the set forward and have it come out in June 16th. Within 2 weeks, first edition Jungle sets were sold out everywhere. The unlimited version was released a little bit after, but there was also accidentally printed a rare Pikachu promo card with the first edition set. This was, as word has it, only available in 1 in every 10 boxes of first edition Jungle, making it a very valuable card. Oh, and also Jungle had a lot of errors in its sets, which I'm sure Professor K will tell you all about in a future video in this series.
Oh yes, I definitely plan on doing a video all about those error cards, but that's in the future. Let's get back to the sets at hand here, and let's look at Jungle, which is up next. Now, this set was also pushed ahead early, just like Jungle. It was also the set that completed the run of the original 151st Pokemon on the English side. It would have been 151 had the English printing not taken out the Mew that was found in the Japanese printing of Fossil. What the English printing decided to do instead was make that same Mew card into a promo a little bit later on down the line. Fossil also had the fewest number of cards in an expansion to date, making it the smallest set ever printed.
Wow, done already? That actually really was a short set. So the next set after that was base set 2, which sounds very familiar. Was this a Ditto set? To answer my own question, yes it was. Base set 2 was comprised entirely of reprints from base and jungle set cards. Wizards of the Coast were famous for doing this in other TCGs, and Pokemon was not going to be an exception. Also, it was the first set to not feature first edition cards. This set was not very popular.
Not really a whole lot of exciting stuff when you're talking about a set that's basically a complete duplicate. No wonder it wasn't accepted very well. let's take a look at a set that was accepted quite well in a lot of Pokemon TCG enthusiast hearts, and that set is Team Rocket. Now to me, this set is very nostalgic, as I opened up more packs of this as a kid than any other set that I can recall. Sure, I was around for base set, sure I was around for jungle, sure I was around for fossil, but for some reason, Team Rocket really holds a place in my heart. The artwork in the set was absolutely exquisite, and the dark Pokemon were completely fascinating to me as a brand new mechanic in the TCG, as before all we'd seen were regular Pokemon. Now what's interesting is that the Pokemon TCG on the English side of things called these dark Pokemon, but the literal translation from Japanese is actually bad or evil Pokemon. This was a sign that English TCG was going to be censoring a lot of cards in the future, and it definitely turned out to be true. There's been a lot of cards printed in Japanese that either were translated differently into more politically correct for public consumption type of attacks or mechanics of Pokemon. Either that, or they were just not printed at all in English. The thought process here was that Pokemon TCG was geared more towards smaller children, therefore they didn't want to have any negative impacts coming from things that might have been a little bit too extreme for children. Dark Pokemon was their compromise, and it's one of many times that this kind of treatment was given to cards to make them more PG for kids. This was also the first set to include a secret rare, and that would be Dark Raichu on the English side only. The Japanese did not get this sort of treatment because Wizards of the Coast had been hounding Nintendo for quite some time to include this card that they designed, and Nintendo wasn't very open to including cards outside of the set that they did not design themselves in the first place. As a result, they had to fight with Nintendo for quite some time to get the final approval on this card. Due to that, Team Rocket was actually delayed by a whole 6 months. Now going back to Dark Raichu, I think it's really cool that the English side of the TCG got the printing of Dark Raichu, while on the Japanese side of things, they had to wait until the Neo sets to see this same card. Now, although Japan did not get Dark Raichu in their set, they did get their first secret rare trainer. This card was known as a super rare card in Japan, and that card was the holographic trainer card, Here Comes Team Rocket, which was included in the English set as a normal trainer and also as a holographic trainer as well. And when it comes to those holographic energy cards, anytime that I build a deck that revolves around Rainbow Energy, I always include the one copy of the Holo Rainbow Energy that I still have to this day.
The Team Rocket set really seemed to revolutionize the TCG and set up a whole bunch of conventions that would appear many years down the line. And the style of having Rocket own cards was almost immediately followed up by Gym Heroes, which would feature characters that we knew from the show and Pokemon they owned, including things like Bboc Zubat or Misty's Psyduck. Something else that they did was make certain cards exclusive to the theme decks released in that set. So those cards were technically rarer than the cards that you could find in the actual packs because they didn't have a rarity symbol. Outside of Japan, a couple of these cards were printed as rares. However, many players felt that these cards weren't given appropriate rarities because cards like Bboc Zubat or Misty's Goldeen or Tentacool weren't really very good in competitive play. These new common rares caused quite a mixed reaction in the Pokemon trading card community, so in Gym Challenge, the set that followed, they decided to give Pokemon rarities based on their abilities in competitive play.
As a competitive TCG player and collector, I would have really hated seeing those cards that lack value and playability become rares in a set. But good thing Wizards got their act together when it came to the next set, Gym Challenge. In this set, there were 2 Japanese cards, Imakuni's Doduo and Blank's Chansey, that were introduced in Japan as White Circle and White Diamond rarities for the first time, but were not included in the English printing. Imakuni is a singer of many popular Pokemon songs in Japan, and was only left out of the English printing to avoid confusion from players, as most of us didn't know who Imakuni was, seeing as how we're not in Japan. Also, as a spoof card that was never released out of Japan, it really did not have place in a serious set. The exclusion of Blank's Chansey was also due to one of the English Pokemon TCG's unwritten rules about including blank owners Pokemon. The only exception to that rule is Blank's Pikachu, that was a promotional card printed in English, but was never allowed for use in competitive TCG. There were a few scandalous art changes between the Japanese and the English releasings of a couple of interesting cards. These specific cards were deemed inappropriate by Wizards of the Coast. The first card that we're going to talk about here is Misty's Tears, which was a trainer card that was printed originally in Gym 1. Gym 1 being Gym Heroes in Japanese. Its English counterpart, however, was not released until Gym Challenge due to an art change. The Japanese version was deemed unsuitable for children, as it featured a naked Misty. This is yet another example of censorship being a very strong presence in the English TCG. The trainer card Sabrina's Gaze also had to be changed due to the appearance of her holding a Master Ball as if she's giving the viewer the middle finger. It kind of looks like she's saying, I'll catch any Pokemon that I want and there's nothing you can do about it, while she's holding that rare Master Ball. Am I right, Toby?
I'd say she certainly looks a bit flipped off.
I suppose the English TCG creators thought that us seeing a slightly extended middle finger was just going to be a little bit too much for us to handle. Moving on, the trainer card Koga's Ninja Trick was also changed due to the fact that it looked like a backwards Nazi swastika. Even the Japanese printing following the first run also had to be changed. Some other cool facts about this set include Blaine's Arcanine, which was the first Pokemon card to feature an attack that dealt a whopping 120 damage, completely unheard of in this era. Also, another interesting fact is that Wigglytuff, Parasect, Dragonite, and Pidgeot all were left out of the set, despite the pre-evolutions getting a printing inside of the set.
Some other interesting things about this set is that Blaine's Moltres was the first Pokemon that needed 5 energy to attack, and speaking of the energy cards, this was the first set since base to release all 6 basic energy cards. Wrapping things up, Wizards of the Coast released 53 Black Star promos. These cards were also known as vending machine cards. These cards were released over 13 different sets from base to Neo Destiny, after which Wizards of the Coast lost their license. So I suppose they would have continued afterwards, but they didn't. And of course, this is where we got the Black Star promo Birthday Pikachu, a card that was immediately banned from competitive play because of it was causing arguments and it was too hard to prove if it was actually anyone's birthday. I suppose this meant people actually tried to pretend it was their birthday for the extra 50 damage on their heads, which was a lot back then.
Some people, am I right? It may have been the first card to get banned, but it certainly was not the last card to be banned in competitive TCG, but that's for another video. Well, that about wraps things up for the first part of this series. Stay tuned every other week for a new installment of Pokemon TCG Facts and History.
That's right, on the next episode we'll be covering everything from Neo Genesis to the Legendary Collection. However, there is one set of cards I do want to talk about this week, and that is the Delta species. Of course, we will be covering those in the future on this series, but right now I am talking about it with Professor K over on my channel in a Pokemon Theory. What are the Delta species Pokemon? It's going to be a lot of fun, so make sure you stay subscribed for the rest of this series and head on over there to check that out. Enjoy.